taken note of the allegations raised in the various petitions against the supposed fraud by the Adani Group and the allegations of the Hindenburg Research Group. And what has essentially happened is that the Supreme Court has set up an expert committee asking SEBI to investigate the charges leveled by Hindenburg and to submit its report. So they're trying to create mechanisms to protect Indian shareholders and investors, and they've set up, so this is O.P. Bhatt, Justice K.P. Devdutt, K.V. Kamath, Nandan Nilekani, Somashekhar Sundaran. That's the committee that's been set up, and the SEBI has been given a 2-month time frame to conclude its investigation in this case. The Supreme Court saying SEBI must investigate if there has been a violation, if there indeed has been manipulation of stock prices. This is massive breaking news. The Supreme Court setting up an expert committee. What will come out of this committee report, we don't know. The makeup of the committee, from what we know, O.P. Bhatt, K.P. Devdutt, who's a former justice, K.V. Kamath, the renowned banker, Nandan Nilekani from Infosys, Somashekhar Sundaran. So, Srishti Oja joins us. She's a
very interesting. Somashekhar Sundaram was the person who was overruled for judgeship. He's an ex-journalist from Mumbai and an expert on financial matters. Excellent on that. So it's a very high-powered committee that they've set up. But the fact is, there is already a SEBI probe. I mean, SEBI has
no, but they have now said within 2 months.
Now this will be an official probe.
No, but they have to conclude within 2 months.
And with an expert committee and Supreme Court supervision. So we'll see.
Shrishti, give us details of what went down in the court this morning. Okay, so remember, Om Prakash Bhatt has been chairperson of the State Bank of India. He's on that committee. K.V. Kamath, who's now back in India, has held important positions in India, internationally, in global high finance. He's on that committee. It's a committee to protect Indian investors and to review the current existing framework. Justice A.M. Sapre will head this committee. Somashekhar Sundaran, Nandan Nilekani are the other members of this committee. This is a big story, and remember, this comes on the back of 2 days when the Adani counters bounced back quite dramatically, and it seemed to people within the Adani group that that was the end of their nightmare. But now this expert committee being set up, and it's been given a 2-month time frame to come up with their responses, and also 2 months for the SEBI to conclude its poll. Now that is important. The SEBI probe that's going on has to conclude within 2 months. I'm just going to go across to the Business Today website and see if I can tell you how the markets are reacting to this. Remember, for the last 2 days there's been a bounce back. This morning Adani Enterprises was up about 3%, trading at about 1600 rupees. So far there hasn't been a negative reaction, but the story literally just broke. So as that information percolates, will there be some kind of a reflection in the markets? Anisha Mathur tracks the Supreme Court for us. She joins us this morning. The Supreme Court setting up this expert committee. Take our viewers through some of the proceedings in the court, Anisha.
Well, Rahul, this morning the Supreme Court has passed a very detailed order asking both the SEBI to continue its investigation. Now, what is interesting is that the court has also set up this expert committee and has asked the SEBI to continue its investigation into all aspects. And in fact, the court has commented that apart from what the SEBI is already doing, what they've said in their affidavit, the SEBI can also look into various other aspects, including violation of insider trading norm, violation of foreign investment and foreign shareholding norms. In addition, they have set up an expert committee which will be headed by retired Justice Abhay Manohar Sapre, who of the Supreme Court. In this committee will also have Nandan Nilekani. It will have Justice K.P. Devdutt. It will have Mr. O.P. Bhatt. It will have Somashekhar Sundaresan, who is a senior lawyer, and as well as this is a 6-member committee which will now be looking at all of these aspects with regard to the framework that exists and how to strengthen the framework. So in effect, 2 lines of investigation now who have to submit reports before the Supreme Court. One, the SEBI investigation, where the court has said that the SEBI must conclude its investigation within 2 months and file a report before the expert committee as well. And the expert committee that has been set up to look into what kind of regulatory mechanisms exist in the country and how can they be strengthened. So it will be very, very crucial to see what happens next in this entire step, because now the court has taken note of the fact that the SEBI is already investigating both the allegations raised in the Hindenburg Group report, which means that there is an inquiry ongoing regarding what has been happening in the Adani Group companies with regarding to their shareholding, with regard to any allegations that have been raised regarding fraud, regarding the role of banks, etc. And also the expert committee, which will be looking into the framework that exists. Remember, the center in its affidavit, the SEBI in its affidavit had said that we already have a robust framework. But with this expert committee now being created, it is clear that there is going to be some sort of a review of the framework that exists, what kind of work is being done by the SEBI and how can it be strengthened, because repeatedly, Rahul, we've seen the Supreme Court has emphasized that there is need to protect the Indian investor from market volatility, and there has to be some sort of regulatory mechanism to ensure that there is no fraud or short selling or deliberate upheavals in the market itself. And even today's verdict, very clearly the court has said that there are several aspects that must be considered both by the SEBI and the expert committee.
But the critical thing there is that SEBI now has to submit its report within 2 months. So far, Rajdeep, there was no deadline for the SEBI to submit its investigative report on the charges leveled by Hindenburg, and that would have taken many months. Now there's a sword hanging, as it were, above the head of the Adani Group, that in 2 months this report has to be out. Now what's in that report, nobody knows, but there's a finite timeline to it now.
And I don't think that the report will be in a sealed envelope, at the moment. And the criticism of the previous government, especially on Rafale, was was a number of critical issues were kept within a sealed envelope.
Do we know that, Anisha, whether it will be in a sealed, as the court said anything, or
just to clarify, Rahul and Rajdeep, the reports are going to be in a sealed cover for now. What the court has said for now is that the SEBI will give its report to the expert committee. The expert committee will file its report in sealed cover. So right now, the report that will come in the next 2 months is not going to be made public at this stage.
No, but there are 6 people in that committee, and it's a public committee.
The sealed cover is a terrible way where the Constitutional Court becomes an executive court. That's been, Justice Chandrachud will face the same criticism that Justice Gogoi faced. We'll wait and see whether that happens. But I think what you're right is, as a result of this, there is this sword that will hang over SEBI, because the question being asked, why is SEBI silent? Why has SEBI not come out with clarity of exactly how it sees the situation playing out? Now, effectively, even the opposition in Parliament will have to wait for 2 months, because they will be told, look, there's an expert committee, please wait for it. So government has also bought itself 2 months.
Between the time the story broke and now, the Adani Enterprises stock has actually gone up 2.5%. So from being about 2%, now it's up about 4.5%. And which means that the markets haven't, at this moment at least, reacted negatively to this. This is an expert committee which is essentially looking at protecting shareholder wealth. And remember, in the past as well, there has been theory put out that short sellers of the likes of Hindenburg should themselves be banned because they create uncertainty. The counter to that is that they add another mechanism in the markets, the absence of which would actually in the long term hurt investor interest. They look at some of those aspects of whether current regulations protect investors or not, but that's the big story coming out of the courts, this expert committee being set up and SEBI to deliver its verdict on the charges by Hindenburg within 2 months. Rajdeep.
But as I said, it does give the government of the day 2 months to almost breathing space. Because otherwise, in the Parliament session, there would have been relentless attacks saying, why is SEBI silent? Why is the Prime Minister silent? Now you can deflect it onto committee, death by committee almost, or at least delay by committee. The question is, I think, new facts are coming out all the time. There's been an expose on certain coal allotments that were made, which even after 2014, after allotments were cancelled, certain projects were kept with the Adanis. All of this will be debated, but I think some of the sting may have been taken out in a way by this committee.